Today on Locked On Canadiens, it was 3-1.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 924. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Scott Matla. And folks, sometimes we forget that hockey is not that deep, and sometimes we just need to remember that it's supposed to be fun. And you know what's really, really fun is when the Toronto Maple Leafs drop a 3-1 lead. That's right, the Montreal Canadiens win the game in overtime. So as is customary, normally at the beginning of the week, we have our 3 up and 3 down. We postponed it one day because we wanted to talk about all the games all together. And also we're going to talk about who at this point is the preseason MVP. But let's get into the game recap. And Scott, I can see you rubbing your hands together. Let's talk about this.
So this game was hilarious in that the Canadiens just came out, punched Toronto in the mouth, went up a goal, gave up 3 goals in a row. Actually, it was 3-1, which LOL. And just they didn't quit on the game. It was frustrating because they'd have stretches of good play and do great things with it, and then give up a goal or be defensively inept or take penalties in this. Like, it's a game that it's like there's progress being made here. They played legitimately well with the net empty this time to start the game. They had a good cycle game going when they were down low. A lot of the players in this had flashes of very good and very bad on both sides of the puck. It was exactly what you want from a learning game and a preseason game here. And yes, it's a preseason game, but that's probably as close to Toronto's opening night roster and Montreal's opening night roster as it will get, give or take, Mike Matheson, John Klingberg, etc. in the lineup on either side of this. But the Canadiens didn't really quit. Jake Allen had a start. Out of all the starts I've seen from NHL goalies, this was one of them where he was very good in some cases and very bad in others, like a lot of other players. He let in the first shot he saw, and it was terrible. But he made a lot of big saves and kept them in the game. It's very fun to see a game like this, to be on the side of a game like this, and that there's so much to say in this. Like, it felt like a regular season game. It was angry. It was chippy. There were a lot of plays. Checks were finished. Penalties were taken. Dudes wanted to fight other dudes in some form of boy math or boy combat or whatever we're calling it now here. And at the end of it, the Canadiens kind of did what they needed to do here and got the win. And yeah, preseason wins don't mean a damn thing, except for when you're a team looking to build a baseline here. If the Canadiens can take the good out of this game that they had tonight and distill that into what they do in the regular season, they're going to be fine. I liked what I saw. I liked the line with Kirby Dach. I liked seeing Nick Suzuki. I thought Sean Monahan and everybody played well. The negatives were there, but at the same time, I saw a lot of good in this game, and I'm going to choose to highlight that first before we go into 3 up, 3 down, because Toronto blew a 3-1 lead, and it's never not funny. It's never not funny anymore.
And I think after the previous game, which obviously did not go this well, there were some comments where it was, Montreal had closer to their regular season roster and Toronto didn't, and Toronto seemed to wipe the floor. But it's also like when you're putting players who are fighting for a chance in the lineup or fighting for a chance for a new contract or whatever, all of that, and you put them against like most of the Montreal roster that was playing that previous game, like they knew where they stood, right? Like when you're trying to put people who prove themselves, obviously the game was going to go that way. But I was just looking at the box score. If you caught me in the background, I was like trying to scroll down. I was looking for the time on ice of Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, and they both played almost 22 minutes each. Like this is like a regular season night for that line, right? And obviously you saw their players, like Tavares was playing. So I think you kind of, and Nylander was playing it. Like you look at that roster, you look at it's the big guns, it's the offensive core of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Montreal was still able to win this game with their admittedly not quite their roster, right? And I thought there were a couple players that really shone in that particular game. I know we're going to get into 3 up 3 down for like the past few games. I thought Kirby Doc, Nick Suzuki, I it, those were that was a good game by both of them.
The top two centers on this team look great. Kirby Doc has been incredible this preseason. He's drawing penalties. He's playing, and it was as our friend Mark Dumont described it, like Clifford the Big Red Dog. It's because he's bigger than everybody, and he's using that. And I'm hoping Slavkovsky can follow after that in this. They were both very good. Kirby Doc was part of the shorthanded goal. Jonathan Kovacevic, as we were talking about before the show, like Martin St. Louis is praising him. They know he's smart. He helped them get back in this game. He set up the shorthanded goal by passing it off to Monahan to Doc, and he scored the 4-3 goal to keep them within striking distance to get that empty net goal and tie the game and get to overtime. And someone put out a stat card tonight about Jordan Harrison and Jonathan Kovacevic when they played together last year and what their wins above the placement card looks like. And it's great. And I think that that's a duo they should put together because it's all up here. And it's not even cerebral. It's just smart, simple hockey. And I think that's what you really want if you're the Montreal Canadiens. And it's hard to not be a fan of this. And
they seem unflappable together. Like, I mean, we already knew that Harris was unflappable. And the underlying numbers, obviously, for Kovacevic were great. When you put them together, it feels like you can very strongly rely on them to keep the puck where it's supposed to be. And I think that for me, it's so underrated. Like people talk about how they don't offer that much. It's like, well, what are you looking at? What metrics are you looking at? If you're talking about scoring goals, no, they don't. But if you're talking about keeping the puck out of the net, but also bringing the game forward, like moving it back into offense, like they're so good at this. And it goes completely unnoticed. And it feels like in every single micro situation, they make the right decision.
And I have to highlight this in this game because it wouldn't be a Toronto game if I didn't. Josh Anderson taking it personally every time he plays Toronto and just being a nuisance is one of the funniest running memes that this team will create. Josh Anderson could not score for 3 months, and they could play the Leafs 3 times in 2 weeks, and he will put up like 7 goals across those 3 games. And he hates them so much. And it is so effing funny that he is the one who got it to overtime tonight because I saw that he was on the ice and I saw the minute I saw Doc pivot and Anderson's in the slot, I'm like, we're going to overtime at this point because if there is one thing that hasn't happened in this game, it is Josh Anderson scoring against the Leafs. And it's funny because it doesn't make sense. Like Suzuki and Caulfield get into good scoring areas and do this. Josh Anderson, through sheer force of will and pure spite for the Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club, just scores goals to be a spiteful, petty little poop poster on the ice. And I adore this thing. It's the most powerful version of the Canadiens we have, is that it used to be, certain players against certain teams would always Tyler Toffoli against Vancouver in the COVID season. Josh Anderson against the Leafs is like a new pantheon of like gods. You had Guy Lafleur playing against the Bruins or Ken Dryden playing against when you have Josh Anderson just spite scoring the Leafs. The Habs are not going to be good this year. I will bank on him scoring in every goal against the Leafs this year as long as he is healthy. And it's just so funny because what do? You just put your hands up and go, of course he did. How many times have we seen people do that to the Habs where we just go, of course that guy scored. Brandon Dubinsky, for how many freaking years was that? That's Josh Anderson to the Leafs. And it's funny. It's really, truly my favorite thing going right now. If nobody got me, I know Josh Anderson scoring on the Leafs has got me.
And remember, like, this is it. To circle back on my earlier point, hockey is supposed to be fun. Preseason doesn't mean anything. Don't poop on this parade. Like, have fun. It was 3-1. Josh Anderson is a golden god against the Toronto Maple Leafs. In the meantime, speaking of fun, we have our weekly 3 up, 3 down. It is a day late. Usually we have it on Mondays, but we wanted to include tonight's game. And that is all coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. How often do you find out an artist that you love is going to be in town and you fear you missed the boat on buying tickets? And then you get into this mad scramble to get your hands on any ticket to this show. This keeps happening to me all the time. But I know that getting tickets should not be stressful. So I turned to Game Time. Game Time has flash deals and it is so easy to use. And it is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And the all-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Do not get me started on fees. You can buy tickets in seconds with just a couple of taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, it is our weekly 3 up and 3 down. And as always, we start with the 3 down first so that we can start on the lower note, but then end on a higher note. And Scott, who is on your to be improved list for this week?
For those who listen to Monday's episode, already know exactly where this is going. Whoever runs the power play, just stop it. I don't know what it is, but just stop doing it. The penalty kill in the games that I've watched this week is outscoring the Canadiens' power play. And that's both hilarious because it means the penalty kill is getting better. Great, cool. We love that. It means the power play also sucks because the penalty kills only scored 2 goals. Like,
do we know who's running the power play at this point? One of our listeners asked us, and I'm like, I think it might be Satan.
Yeah, it could be at this point. Like, and the thing is, because Alex Burrows at the end of the game, and Ian Boisvert points this out all the time, is he's the one drawing up plays on like the whiteboard. So I assume he is still having some input into the power play here, as far as I can tell. If he isn't, and Martin St. Louis is doing it, and it's still not working, and it's gotten actively worse, try literally anything else.
Just hire a new coach. Just have like 10 coaches. It's fine.
You're Jeff Molson. Just go make another batch of something and you can hire a coach for a year or an analyst to do something like this. And I watched Toronto's power play in this game, how they worked it down low to the goal line and then went across the high danger areas. And they didn't always convert, but they were dangerous. They had the tabs scrambling. I get that you don't have Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, but you can still make a similar system work with what you have.
You don't always have to score, but you can be dangerous instead of being disappointing.
And that's the thing is I would take them looking improved on this too. I don't want a don't get me wrong, I want a top 10 power play. I'm asking for league average, which is not a huge ask on this. So my biggest down apparently it is. I didn't think it was that big of an ask, but apparently it is now. Like, my whole thing is that I just want a league average power play. It is my biggest down from watching the preseason so far. It's rough, and it's just be better, please. Begging you to be better.
Do we have any other downs, or is it just the power play?
I mean, the discipline's a little bit lacking, to be honest. And this is not just Arbor Jacki, Logan Mailloux, other players. They were in the box a lot for stick infractions and everything. And for the first couple weeks of the season, they call that stuff like it is life and death. And the Canadiens, who sometimes struggle on the penalty kill and have gotten less than ideal goaltending through the preseason here across the board. It hasn't been horrific, but it hasn't been what they hoped it would be. is not what you want. It's a losing combination.
So just need to like tighten things up a little bit.
And that's exactly it. And my biggest down for this is it's the first national broadcast I've gotten to watch in this preseason because they've had a few on TSN, and RDS has had most of them based on the availability that I've had to watch. Sportsnet should be ashamed of themselves for that product that they put out in this game because it was horrendous. I've never seen a broadcast that is, and I get it, there will be favoritism towards the more popular team right now, and that's Toronto, and everyone's eyes are on them, and I get it. I've never seen a national broadcast skewed so far in one direction, and that's just in the intermissions. There are two teams playing, and 90% of it is talking about one of them, which is kind of frustrating if you're tuning in as someone wanting to know what else is going on. And then in game itself, it is not hard to learn how to pronounce a player's name. It really, truly is not. And I try my best that I am not always great at it.
I can't even figure out how to say Kovacevic.
Jonathan Kovacevic. To be fair, it was Slavkovsky for you last year. It was always 2 tries, and then the third one was
Slavkovsky.
Slapkowskis. Which, and the thing about it is you are the national broadcast. You are the pinnacle of what this is supposed to be. I heard Mayu. I heard Ulanen, Ylonen, Alonen, and it's just like, ask somebody how this is pronounced. They give you a pronunciation guide with the team sheets, and you can ask somebody about this. To just kind of guess at it and stumble over it for 3 periods when you are the top peak broadcast is embarrassing. And yes, I get it. Like, it is difficult to sometimes learn, but I look at everything else. I look at guys like Gord Miller who go out of the way to ask the players, how do you pronounce this? That is an extra step that is important here. And Gord Miller covers a lot of international hockey where there's a lot more complicated or, not straightforward names. To just be going into this and treating it like, some Bush League kind of broadcast is just, it's garbage. Fans deserve better than what they're getting tonight. And it's like, are we watching the same game? Are you trying to, be involved in this? And it's just so frustrating to the point that the Slack chat is open behind me here because someone asked about the OT call from the Habs Twitter, and it was the RDS feed in which they compared it to the Sportsnet feed. Someone on Twitter was looking at it and going, it's night and day. That I don't understand French, but I would listen to whoever is calling the game on RDS, which of course is Pierre Houd, the legend himself.
Who also, by the way, makes it a point to ask every single player how they would like their name pronounced in French.
And that's the thing, is it's like, it makes a difference. And I watch the English broadcast more often than not so I can pick up names if I'm doing something and work, because I multitask while I'm watching games. If I had the choice, I would watch every broadcast in French because there's passion and excitement behind that.
And they are pretty good quality. The ones on RDS, I'm not enamored with the ones on TVA Sport at this point, but it's also a relatively new product, right? And they don't have the legend himself. So, but the quality of the analysis and the discussion is also much better, despite some of the issues that I have with it. It is far, far better. And the thing that I feel like Sportsnet is forgetting is that, yes, it's true that the majority of Habs fans that are in Quebec are probably going to tune into RDS because the product is better, but also most of us are Francophone. But at the same time, there's a whole bunch of Habs fans, not just in Canada, not just in Quebec who are Anglophone, not just in Canada, but everywhere, that will want to watch this broadcast in English. And not only that, there's a whole bunch of other fans that are invested in the Leafs losing, right? So alienating them by only really having this bias, that's altitude sports.
Yes, and here's my final note on this too, just so it's I'm not saying, oh, they only love the Leafs. I think they might not be good at this anymore. There are times that
the refs, how they don't hate your team, they just suck.
Yes, and it's I've listened to some broadcasts where it's there was a game against Detroit last year, I think, that sounded like they were broadcasting a funeral, that they were being held at gunpoint to call the game. And yes, I get it was the Montreal Canadiens and Detroit Red Wings in 2023, but act like you give it a little bit of a damn at least. I don't know. I realize my downs, there's probably more analysis that needs to be made in this, but I'm going to take a look at the preseason numbers in between day trips and stuff for work. But for right now, my downs are mostly tied into what I saw tonight and over the last couple games, because I'm not going to be too mad. It was 3-1. I'm in a good mood this Monday evening, to be honest. So like, it's hard to not be having a good time.
I also think that we should talk about the 3-up, and that's coming up in just one moment, including who so far is the preseason MVP. It's coming up in just one moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers are going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And the official partner of the 3-down is the 3-up. So, Scott, who is our 3-up and who is our preseason MVP? I have a guess as to the 3 people you're going to say, but I'm going to keep it to myself for a moment, and then I'm going to say I was right when you say the names.
Well, I'm going to save the MVP for last in this, just because I think that makes the most sense. My ups as of the last couple games that I've watched, one is definitely going to Kirby Dach. I think Kirby Dach's been phenomenal, and it's not slowing down the narrative of, is Nick Suzuki the 1C or is it Kirby Dach? And I say, it doesn't matter. Shut up and enjoy it. Dach has taken his game to another level, and he has been by far on my up list this entire preseason. I've loved what I've seen from him across the board. Also on the up list, and despite
Sorry,
and no longer with the Habs, he's in Laval Rocket training camp here. Is William Trudeau. I was really impressed with him. I was talking with Ian Boisvert about it, and that I think he's going to be very quickly in line for a call up when bodies are moved out, bodies are into the press box for whatever reason. I think he's very. They added 4 people to the injured list across both teams today, so we're getting off to a great start in that regard. He's definitely on there. And my last up, and I think the most surprising one for me, because I went in with no expectations for them in camp, is Matthias Norlinder. I think Norlinder has shown a lot of maturing in his game that I didn't see last year in the rookie showcase or in the preseason, or even with the Rocket a lot of times. He still has some baffling decisions. He's still younger, and they are prone to happen. It's a thing that happens with young defensemen. But what I have noticed is he is so much more assertive with the puck on his stick. When he makes a thing, he is not half-assing it. He is going for it. His opening goal tonight, got the scoring started and everything on the power play. He's direct with his attacks, and he looks more and more and more like the kid we saw over in Sweden with Frölunda and other teams there. And it's really hard to not want to root for him. I know that there's a chance he's going to be a waivers casualty just because he doesn't require waivers to go down, and they got to figure that out. But if there's someone who's earned the spot on the Canadiens this year out of all the prospect defensemen, I think Norlinder is that guy. And yes, defensive game's a work in progress, but I like what I've seen in the upside from everything else here. And I think Matthias Norlinder is probably my biggest surprise out of training camp and into the preseason this year for all the right reasons. And I love that. I absolutely adore that. And I really hope there's a big season ahead for him, whether he's in the AHL or playing a role in the NHL this season.
And finally, time for the MVP.
It's Kirby Dach. It's not hard to,
Wait, did we do 3-up? We did Norlinder, we did Trudeau.
It was Norlinder, Trudeau, and Dach.
Kirby Dach. Right.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I didn't know if you had an interjection on your 3-ups of the preseason here too or not.
Not at all. I was just going to apologize because I tried to put something away and I kept dropping it and I wasn't on mute. So sorry to the listeners for those 2 clanging sounds. It's just a necklace. It's nothing serious. I almost said I'm okay in the middle of the recording. But yes, Kirby Doc. I think for me, one thing is that most of the people are who I expected them to be, if that makes sense. So in terms of my 3 up, 3 down, like it could have been any one from the guys that I was expecting. And to be honest, even with the Slavkovsky thing, it's going exactly like I envisioned that it would. I think we still need to have a little bit of patience. I think, there's a lot of people that are the sky is falling, the sky is falling. We don't need to chicken little Uri Slavkovsky. He's still pretty young, and the Canadians have put him in a very strange situation, to say the least. They might send him down. I don't know. That might be good for him. I don't know. But either way, like everything is kind of like there's nobody that's really surprising me, except for Caden Primo, really. I didn't expect that much. Like I didn't expect that much Caden Primo out of Caden Primo. But in the meantime, like I think you're right with Kirby Doc, just because he's just so good at anticipation, I find.
He's been so good at playing a grinding cycling style without being a grinding cycling boring type. Like we've talked about how Yoel Armia used to be able to cycle the puck for days and maybe not do anything with it. Kirby Doc does things with that, and I look at the team tonight too. Is that the lines were all shuffled up here, and that Anderson's playing here. That there was no new hook in the lineup tonight. Armia still out injured. Lindstrom didn't play, etc. And they stepped up in a way to absolutely fill that void. And Kirby Doc is making that line tick. And I think he's brought the best out of Uri Slavkovsky. I'm still not 100% sure what they're going to do with Slavkovsky yet. I could understand sending him to the AHL. The AHL team is stacked after Philippe Maillet and Elias Anderson both cleared waivers after everybody else did. It's a crowded group here, and he's not in danger of falling behind anybody or being left behind anybody. That's not going to happen. It's the opportunities is, iron sharpens iron is, the phrase, right? He's got a lot of good talent at either level to work in with and make things happen. And I see all the little things that he's doing, and pairing him up with Kirby Doc, someone who is a similar frame, went through similar growing pains and everything coming into the league here. Things seem to be trending in the right direction there. And I'm hoping they keep Doc and Slavkovsky together to start the year. Maybe it's Monahan on that line. Maybe it's Alex Newhook. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. I don't know. There's options. But Doc bringing the best out of him, I think, is what the Canadians want to see going into this preseason here, or out of this preseason here. And I got to be honest, like Doc being my preseason MVP shouldn't shock anybody at this point. He's been very, very, very good. And I'm glad to see that he's hitting his stride in year 2 right away. We know he can play center away from Suzuki and Caulfield. And now it's time to start deepening that Canadians attack. And hopefully the goals and everything come with that now too.
And I wanted to do a quick Monday shout out to a commenter who brought back a Ryder Halak and a second reference back into our comment section the other day. And if you guys don't know what that is, don't worry, because a listener requested an intro to being a Habs fan guide from us, which we will do in one of the off days of this coming, well, it might even still be in the preseason or in the coming season. We'll definitely do one of those, why we hate the Bruins, who we hate, and why, what it was 3-1 is all about, or it was 4-1, or there's so many different pieces of Habs lore out there. So we will be doing one of those on listener request. In the meantime, make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. You'll find us on the app formerly known as Twitter at LO_Canadians. You'll find us on social media individually as I'm the Active Stick and Scott is at Scott Matla. In the meantime, please subscribe, review, tell your friends so people can find us. And as you know, we are here 5 days a week. So obviously, we will talk to you tomorrow.